Hello,
All right.
and welcome to a special episode. All right, I'm going to start over.
Sorry.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Everything looks like it's recording. Okay.
Get together, have a few laughs.
Uh-oh, shit, lady, do I sound like I'm ordering a pizza?
Hey, put the freaking gun down on the ground right now. Take your shot across the freaking street and say until we come and get you.
Hello, and welcome to a special episode of Where There's a Willis, There's a Way podcast. We normally talk about a Bruce Willis movie, but today we're not. That's the tagline of our podcast. My name's Kendrick Martin.
And I'm Josh Carter.
So normally, like I said, we talk about a Bruce Willis movie. We break it down, we break it up, we break it in. But today, I want to talk about a different movie. This is a movie called RRR.
Brace yourself for wrong. Brace yourself for
ఈ నక్కల వేట ఎంతసేపు కుంభస్థలాన్ని బద్దల కొడదాం పదా
Brace yourself.
That is currently on Netflix. It is a action movie from India, and it is blowing up right now. Netflix has been really good about showing kind of foreign films in general, but this movie in particular has just been getting an astonishing number of people to watch it. So I asked Josh to watch it. It's a little bit of a hurdle to watch. It's over 3 hours, and it is in different language, so it has subtitles, and he watched it, so I'm really glad. But before we dive in, Josh, did you like it? Did you hate it? I hope you didn't hate it.
I did not hate it. It's a lot. The movie is like a I don't know, adrenaline shot.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. It's very stylistic. It's interesting. But no, I didn't hate it at all.
Yeah, so it starts at 10 and just only goes up. And I feel like I've said that about a lot of movies, but this is a 3.5 or 3 hours and change movie, and it legitimately starts with some bananas action. And
Oh, yeah.
it just continually gets... So the opening title screen has like a note that's, please note that all the animals seen in this movie are CGI and not real. No real animal was harmed. And it lists off all the animals that are in this movie. And it is, like tiger, wolf, snake, goat, just like goats, fish, alligator, all kinds of stuff. And you're just like, What am I going to get myself into? So before we start talking about it, I want to talk about kind of the cultural context that it drops into. And I am not a big Indian or Hindi cinema fan. Like I've seen a couple movies from different filmmakers, but I haven't watched a ton, and I definitely don't know a lot of the historical relevance around Bollywood in particular. But there has been some great writing done about this movie that kind of unpacks the cultural climate that it's dropping into. And so I'll post those links in the show notes. But I wanted to kind of summarize them. So typically when you think of Indian cinema, or what we call Bollywood, that comes out of the city of Mumbai. And a lot of those movies tend to be romances and have a lot of singing and dancing. And that's kind of what you think of when you think of Bollywood movies. Well, it turns out there are several different kind of film centers in India and each of the different areas speak a different dialect. So India itself is the country. People speak a bunch of different dialects, and inside the filmmaking world, there is other cities where they speak different dialects that have different filmmaking empires. So this movie, RRR, is what is being called as a Tollywood movie. So it's like with a T instead of a B. Although some people say that, by referencing it back to Hollywood, you're kind of like westernizing it in general. So I don't know if that term is, like what they're going for. But it's mainly, I just wanted to call it out that it is different than what you would know as a Bollywood movie. Mm-hmm. And the biggest thing is typically the dub you will see on Netflix is in Hindi, and the original film was filmed in the language of Telugu, I believe is how it's pronounced. And so what you're actually watching is a different Indian dialect dub of the original movie. Oh. And then subtitled in English. So I know that the lead actors are they did their own dubbing. And I rewatched some of this recently just because I can't get enough of it. And I was curious, like, how different the dialects are and how different the songs are, because the songs all sound really good. But if the words are different in different languages, how do the songs work as well, or do the words change completely? I know that people have said the watching it in the original Telugu, the translation does have a little bit of a different meaning, and some of the sentences land a little differently. Huh. So I would love to try to find it in Telugu. The reason that you're watching it in the Hindi dub is the Telugu dub is saved only for the specific new streaming service that they're trying to launch. So you can find it. You just have to pay, sign up for this like Indian movie specific streaming service. And that's where you can find the Telugu dub. From what I've been told, I have not watched it. And I think if you go see, if it's shown in the movie theater, you will see when you go to the theater, they'll call out which version they're going to show you. Because I think sometimes at the theater, you're seeing the Telugu dub.
Interesting.
So yeah, I thought that was really fascinating, and I would love to A, see it in a movie theater, and B, watch the Telugu dub sometime and see how different it is. Mm-hmm. But the other thing I wanted to bring up is this movie is very filled with political touch points, and it's like basically kind of telling the story of the colonial British Empire occupying India, and our main characters are kind of like fighting against the colonial regime, and they're apparently based on real people. Mm-hmm. But I saw someone quote that the movie is about as historically accurate as Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter is. So definitely, I don't think anybody expects this. This is not like a modern retelling of a actual revolution story. I think this is just kind of like a fantastical imagination.
It's closer to like Zorro, where it's like there was a real life folk hero.
Yeah, but I think even Zorro the movie is probably more historically accurate than this movie is.
Oh yeah, I guess
because
that's fair.
This movie incorporates a lot of Hindu gods into their family lives that kind of like explain why certain people are named certain things, and that obviously was not historically accurate. But so another thing that this article, this writer, who I should just look his name up because I keep referencing him, he talks about how the political climate in India right now is very pro-India, and it's very alt-right, anti-Islam. Like the president, was a big fan of Trump, and there's a lot of kind of like rioting going on, and like fascist uprisings and all that stuff. There's definitely kind of, I don't know how you feel about this, Josh, but whenever I see a movie that is like super pro-America and they're talking about how great America is, I kind of like cringe a little bit.
Oh yeah.
Even if they're not, saying like, I am a fascist or whatever. Just the fact our American imagery has been so co-opted by fascist alt-right groups that I can't now not ever see the American flag and think that they're going to bring up some terrible thing.
Yeah, that's why like even a movie that's not like Air Force One, it's got some elements of that, but when you're watching it, I feel like it evokes different emotions today than it would have even like 10 years ago.
Exactly. And I think so that's similarly happening in India. And so this movie is very pro-India. And so I think the author, so the author of this article that I'm referring to is Ritesh Babu. He goes into a lot of detail there that I think is really good. So he has a long write-up. Again, I'll post the link in the show notes. So there's a lot of baggage. But all that aside, this is probably going to be one of my favorite movies of the year. I loved it.
Yeah. That is exciting because I didn't love it, but I'm excited to hear about the stuff that you adore about this movie.
So the movie begins with this guy, and he's like the only Indian guy in the mostly British army, and there's this massive wave of people who are upset, and they're just gonna like tear the fence down. Like it is zombie horde level wave.
Oh yeah.
And they tell this one Indian soldier, our hero, Ram, I think he's one of the R's.
Yeah.
They tell him like, all right, you got to go get this guy out there who's like the instigator. And he just strong wills his way through this crowd of people fighting hordes off. And it's never like this movie is definitely making them superheroes. And
oh yeah,
it's never like, magic superheroes where it's like they have a Hulk smash shockwave that's throwing people away. It's like he legitimately gets buried and then just has to fight his way up through the pile of people.
It felt like an Indian John Wick.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of John Wick. I saw someone say that it was like John Wick meets Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid meets Passion of the Christ.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's just a lot.
It is bonkers.
There's a scene about an hour in where there's a dance off between these two Indian guys are challenged to this dance off by this like, also I love how all the white people are so cardboard bad.
Oh
like,
yes.
All these British people are like, yes, I'm the worst in the world. Would you like some tea? And it's like everything they say is just like there's no subtext. It is they are the evilest, just one-dimensional villains, and it is so much fun.
It totally feels like Cold War era, like anti-Russian propaganda in U.S. movies.
Yeah,
the amount of evilness that we associated with Russians and stuff like that. And yeah. So,
but this dance off
so funny.
is between like the British, jokers and our heroes, and it is just unbelievably amount of fun. And there's just like great music in this whole movie. A lot of physicality, a lot of dancing.
I've had enough of this nonsense. You two, out!
There's a scene. There's like 2 heists in this movie. Like this movie ends. This movie is like halfway over, and you're like, I think the movie's over. But then there's another heist, and there's a scene like it is the ultimate like bro helping bro movie.
Oh yeah,
and they like one of them rides the other one's shoulders, and they just like run up walls fighting dudes. And
yep, yeah. So there's one of the moments where they're like conveying that they're such good friends. I think the other guy's name is Beheem or Beam or something like Beam.
They're both R names because that's the RRR.
Oh, okay. Bream. I thought that the RRR was Rise, Roar, Revolt.
That's another RRR.
Oh, okay. Many RRRs in there.
Yeah.
But yeah, so is it Bream?
Yeah, I think so. Here, I'll look it up. I'll look it up while you're talking.
Okay, sounds good. So he and the other guy, Ram, once they start like conveying that they're friends, they have like different ideological differences that kind of make it seem like it's not going to be a friendship that'll last. They kind of make that clear and like foreshadow it and stuff like that. But they convey through song and this montage how their friendship is growing, and it is so heartfelt and believable within the context of the movie. It just made me mad at the whole 9 yards that's trying to get me to believe that Bruce Willis and Matthew Perry are such good friends after having one conversation together. I'm like,
Yeah.
use the montage. It's
It was
brilliant.
such like a sweet, just like bros being bros, and then he helps her. He helps him get the girl by like
It's so
mistranslating.
good.
He's like, he's gonna fix your car. It's gonna take all day. He's gonna give you a walk, and the guy's like, "What? I don't know what you're saying." Oh, it's just so funny. So
It's
I was
great.
So I was wrong. His name's Beam, but the
Beam,
actor's
okay.
name is Rama. The other one's actor's name is Ram. And that's another thing I meant to bring up was, in I don't know if it's Telugu specifically or just all Indian cinema, movie stars are like dynasties, and they don't really even market the movie. They market the star, so much so that it'll just be called the movie star's name and then a number sometimes. So like,
Wow.
instead of like, the Avengers, it would just be like Robert Downey Jr. 3 or something.
That's amazing.
And usually a dynasty works only with its own family members. So like,
Yeah.
but this movie has 3 dynasties, and they're all R named. So that's why the movie is named RRR, because it's all 3 of these like major actors.
Who's the other major actor then?
So our 2 main heroes,
Yeah.
Rama Rao Jr. and then Ram Charan. And then I think Ray Stevenson might be the 3rd R. He's the main British guy.
Oh, yeah, the main bad guy.
I don't know if he's into Indian cinema or what, but his name is Ray Stevenson, so I assume he's the 3rd R.
All right. Important editor note. In looking it up, because I was super curious, I found out that is actually not correct, and I'm going to throw it over to a segment that I pulled from a Patrick H. Willems video, just to explain it, because I think he does a great job explaining it. We'll also link that down in the show notes.
But a big part of why audiences were so amped for RRR is because it brought together 2 of Tollywood's biggest stars, who, at least according to them, have never done a movie together before because no production could afford them both. During RRR's end credits musical number, which by the way is spectacular and something that every movie should have, at one point a middle-aged man shows up who was not actually in the movie itself, and my audience went nuts, whistling and cheering for this guy. I looked it up when I got home and discovered that was the director, S.S. Rajamouli. People reacted to the director's cameo like he was Tobey Maguire showing up in No Way Home. Because remember, in the past decade, with his films Bahubali: The Beginning and Bahubali 2: The Conclusion, this guy had become India's most popular filmmaker. To really illustrate how big a deal these people are, let's talk about the title. RRR stands for Rise, Roar, Revolt in English, and a number of similar things in the many Indian languages it was released in. But those slogans were all reverse engineered because RRR was actually the film's working title when it was announced back in 2018. It stood for Ram Charan, Rama Rao Jr., and Rajamouli. 3 names so huge in Tollywood that they just decided to stick with it and name the movie after them. This is like if The Post was called Streep Hanks Spielberg.
And once again, that video will be linked down in the description below. All right, let's get back to the rest of the episode. Yeah, the movie is fucking balls to the walls as far as like the action and the energy and everything goes. It's pretty bonkers.
Yeah, it's just a lot. And I watched it on an airplane, and I was like, okay, I'm going to watch part of this movie, and then I'll probably turn it off and like go read a book. But then the next thing I know, my flight's over, and the movie's not over. And I'm sitting there like, hey, can we taxi a little longer? I got 35 minutes left.
That's funny. That sounds like a great way to watch it, because like when you're I don't know, sometimes with all of the like big sound and everything and like a home theater setup, you're like, oh, this is a little bit exhausting. It's It is like a shot of adrenaline, but it just goes on so intensely for so long that you're just like, I don't know. I found myself a little bit overwhelmed after a while. Like,
yeah, so if you see it in the movie theater, they have an intermission.
Oh, that's good.
I think it would be hard to watch it all in one sitting otherwise. I highly recommend people break it up into a couple of viewings. But if you are listening and you like action movies at all, this has everything. And it's definitely not like the highest budget movie that you've ever seen, but it looks pretty good. Like, those animals are all CGI, and there's a lot of animals doing crazy animal stuff, but it looks fine, looks passable. Maybe in 30 years we're gonna cringe looking at it, but it doesn't bother me now.
Yeah, and the CGI varies. Like, there's some moments where it kind of goes a little bit unnoticed and it's just an additive, and then other times, like, where there's a train on screen and there's like a slow motion bullet at one point, and both of those look a little bit janky.
Man, the scene,
but yeah, generally, it's good.
The train scene where Rom and Beam first meet, and they just communicate only via like hand motions. They're like
whacking their hands and their arms and stuff like that.
Yeah, they're like, they just meet, and there's like a train wreck, and they're like, okay, well, you got to do this, you got to do that, and then the actual orchestration is just,
it's bonkers,
wild.
Yep. Yeah, it's like, I'm so glad that I wasn't one of those guys, because I would not have gotten that plan from the arm waving and stuff like that.
Josh is back here playing charades. All right, sounds like...
Oh, I got this one. Yeah, and even like while that scene was happening, I was like, what is going on? What is happening? What is going on? What is happening?
Because... you think that one guy's been looking for the other to capture him, and they don't know that when they first meet. And so you think like, oh, he realizes who that guy is, and they're going to have to be saving this person while fighting each other. But no, they're just all about saving one another.
Yep.
Man.
Yeah. I will say that one thing that I didn't love about the movie was that the movie has like a really long backstory segment in like the second half, and you kind of need it, because it explains what's going on with the character, where up to that point it was very confusing what they were doing, but it really slows the movie down. But then it adds all these really cool elements that they use in the last half of the movie, so I'm just really torn about that segment in particular.
Also, that whole flashback, you're right. It is tonally weird. I think it's good though, because it helps modulate the tempo a little bit.
Yeah.
But that scene with the learning how to fight with just stick guns, and then they have one gun, and they're just having to fight all these soldiers. Oh.
What is it that he says? Like load, aim, shoot, or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Man, this is an intense scene.
It was great. One of my favorite parts in that scene, too, is that there's, like, a bunch of British soldiers who are like, move up! And then you can tell that, like, whenever there's a scene with a bunch of British dudes, like, the first 5 guys in the frame are all white guys. And then after that, they're, like, white-ish Indian dudes, and like sometimes you can hear like accents when they're saying their lines in English as well, and you're like, you're not a British guy, you can't fool me.
Yeah,
it's so fun though.
Oh man, it's just like an endless amount of fun things going on.
Yeah. One of my favorite moments, and the moment that I called out in my Letterboxd review, is towards the end of the movie. It's not like a spoiler really, but there's a sequence where the two heroes, like Henrik mentioned, are riding around. One is on the other person's back because they're like slightly injured, and they have 2 guns in their hand that they're shooting while the guy's running around and like jumping up on stuff and climbing things. And I was like, finally, we got ourselves a real good video game based movie, a Banjo-Kazooie movie. Woohoo.
Josh, you need to, now that Everything Everywhere All at Once is on VOD, you need to watch that at some point, because there's a joke that I would make to you if you had seen that and RRR. So I'll save that joke for next time. But
Okay, put it
another
in the
part,
joke bin.
another part that's great is about the halfway point. There's this big raid with all the animals.
God, man, that scene was so great.
There's a scene where one guy is like jumping off of a wall, and you think he's like made it because he's well off a wall, and there's like all these explosions. But then the other guy, Rom, jumps off the wall after him and grabs him and like pulls him back up with this rope.
Yep.
Man, so every time you're like, okay, he's made it, and then you're just like, nope.
And this movie makes extensive use of CGI slow-mo sequences.
Yes.
And it's amazing. It's amazing. Like, if you had a game where you're like, I'll take a drink every time there's a slow-mo sequence, you would be rushed to the hospital by the end of this movie. I don't care how tiny your sips are. You would be rushed to the
I
hospital.
don't even care if you're drinking water. You'd probably still have to go to the hospital.
Oh, yeah. This man's consumed 30 gallons of water in the last hour.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is bananas.
Yeah. It's a lot of fun. This filmmaker has also made a movie called Bahubali. And I have watched part of that movie. I think it's a 2-part movie. But the basic premise of that movie is it's like a tribe of people who live at the bottom of a waterfall. And they've always said that, like, you can never climb out of the waterfall. This is just where we live. And one little kid's like, I'm going to climb out of the waterfall. And so the movie's just him trying to learn how to climb up this waterfall. And then, like, about halfway through, he finally climbs up the waterfall. Like, that's the movie, is just him learning to climb a rock wall. But
nice.
Same filmmaker and same level of, like, crazy frenetic action. But still just, like, stories where you're just like, what on earth? This is just about people who live at the bottom of a waterfall and have never been to the top? Wild.
Yeah. I think that this guy does a great job selling you on premises that in another filmmaker's wheelhouse, it wouldn't work. But they take it to such this ridiculous heightened level of stylization that you just kind of, you go with the flow, and it's ridiculous, but you buy it. And
he's
I
also,
think that's amazing.
Also, all the actors are super charismatic.
Oh, yeah.
You just immediately, love them, love the guys, love their relationship. The evil people are evil. There's no dancing around that fact. It's great. I don't really have much more to say. I just wanted to chit chat with you and get you to watch it. So I'm glad we got to talk about it. This was like
Same here.
A quick one, but man.
Yeah, I liked it. And Kendrick I was like, Kendrick, I'm about an hour of the way through my viewing of it. And then Kendrick was like, oh, you mean your first viewing? It's an everyday thing for you. And I was like, oh, I hope not. But now I'm kind of like itching to get my RRR on again.
Yeah, I know. Every time I think about it, I'm like, I should just turn that on in the background. It's just like some fun action movies that people just have on in the background.
Yep.
And should be one of them.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I wish that they could have gotten like Bruce Willis in one of these movies.
Yeah.
Why not? Why not?
That would have been great.
Yep. For sure.
Okay, well, I don't really have much more to say about RRR.
Same here. I was expecting a pirate movie when I first heard about it, but I was disappointed, also, then impressed.
Repeatedly, this movie just will show a big word across the screen and then add in extra R.
Highlight the R.
R. Or the cinema version, if you go to the movie theater, will say intermission. Just very silly.
Yeah. It's bananas, but it's good bananas. And we're monkeys, so we like bananas.
We are. So RRR, check it out on Netflix. Josh, it's been great talking to you.
Likewise. Real quick before we go, what would you rate this movie out of a Bruce Willis?
Probably a Bruce Willie.
A Bruce Willie?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I'd do a Bruce Will 1L.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Pretty high. Pretty high.
We recommend it.
Yeah. Definitely recommend it. Okay.
All right.
Catch you next time.
Sounds great. See you guys later. Thanks for listening.
Oh, yes, it's fun time. Fun time. Let yourself be happy. It's fun time. Shake time. Break time. It's fun time. You all go.
Bop, bop.